All the work and the fun begins after the book is done, not before. So getting the book done is just like buying the Ferrari and putting it in the garage. All the fun happens, when you take the Ferrari out of the garage.
Hello there, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Orthopreneurs podcast. I'm your host, Glenn Krieger, and today I've got Rob Kosberg, founder of Bestseller Publishing. Hey, welcome, Rob.
Glenn, great to be with you, my friend, and happy to, oh my gosh, did I just get blown out there by light?
It's like one of those old movies where someone gets electrocuted.
I know, it's like I got struck by lightning all of a sudden.
Wile E. Coyote just grabs the cord, and I think I'm dating myself there, but it's okay, we're back.
No, that's right on.
Rob and I first crossed paths because we both belong to a mastermind with Todd Brown, who's one of the preeminent copy, offer, sell guys on the planet. And we were just sitting there one day having a chat, and you guys will find out as we talk more about this, what it is that Rob does and why I gravitated to him so quickly. But do you mind, before we get to what you do, in 10 seconds or less, how would you sum up what Bestseller Publishing does?
We're a done-for-you service. We help experts, consultants, and coaches write a book, launch it to bestseller, and then how to use that book to grow their business and their practice.
Now, I'm going to ask you, like I do everybody, in that 60 to 90 second time span, tell us a little bit about how you ended up being where you are. How'd you end up doing this?
I failed my way right into it.
If I had a nickel every time someone said that on this show, it's unbelievable. Everybody says, oh, I failed at this, and I ended up with this. How did it happen?
I had been in real estate for a long time. I got my real estate license at 18. My dad owned a real estate company. Fast forward many years in and out of real estate. In the early 2000s, I had 3 really successful real estate companies doing over $100 million a year in transactions, and right up until the time it was doing zero. And so we were ground zero for the financial collapse. And long story short, I had a couple of mentors. I've always believed in mentorship, and I was moving out of real estate. I didn't want to stick with it. I was done with it. And I asked my mentors, if you were in the position that I'm in right now, starting over, you've been known for real estate your whole life, how would you build a new brand? How would you build authority in a new place? And 2 mentors separate from each other said the same thing. They said I should write a book. And for whatever reason, it resonated with me. And so I wrote a book for my financial services company, and this was in 2009, and it exploded. My business took off $1 million the first year, multi-millions the second year. And many of my clients were business owners, and they just started coming to me saying, what are you doing? It was clear that my business was exploding because we did a lot of radio advertising back in those days. And we owned the South Florida radio market. And they were like, how are you doing it? And I said, well, it's all my book. My book gets me media attention. My book gets me speaking. My book gets me lead generation. And so people just said, can you help me? Do you think it'll work for me? And I was like, I don't know. Let's try. And so I just randomly started helping people back in 2010, and fell in love with it, and sold my financial services company in 2012 and went all in on Bestseller Publishing. Since then, it's been, 2,000 done-for-you clients, 100 plus Wall Street Journal bestsellers. Very, very fun. Lots of cool people.
So what he's describing, folks, you've heard, if you've been to an Orthopreneurs Summit before, you've heard of authority marketing. Now, maybe you were at Summit and you didn't remember hearing it, but we had someone on stage, I think it was Adam Whitty from Advantage Forbes Books at the time. He talked about authority marketing. And what you're describing right now is one of arguably the best ways on the planet to grow your sphere of influence because, and I'll let you do most of the talking on this one, but it doesn't take a genius as an orthodontist to recognize where a book, and we'll talk more about that because we have something really cool that we haven't talked about publicly that we're going to share on the show later while we're talking about a way that orthodontists can do this without having to put through all the energy, effort, and cost that would ordinarily be involved in this sort of stuff to try to help them develop it. But talk to me a little bit, if you don't mind, about some of the principles behind authority marketing, right? What it really means, and we'll frame it as I'll frame it with you for orthodontists, but I'd love you to talk a little bit more about why does creating a book suddenly create business? And my follow-up, or maybe the prequel, is do we know for sure that if I make a book, that is really going to help me?
So the answer is yes, if. And it will absolutely help you if you use it. And what many people do, surprisingly, is they get a sense of great satisfaction when they write their book and they complete their book. And oftentimes that sense of satisfaction is all that they were looking for in the first place. That wasn't my case, right? My case was
a book. Hey, I wrote a book.
Yes, yeah, and because it's such a source of pride for people. You know, there's so much achievement and accomplishment of it. Just consider the number of people that you know that are actually published authors and even best-selling authors. It's a very, very rare quality. And so too many authors just stop right there, and they don't realize that, like, actually all the work and the fun begins after the book is done, not before. And so getting the book done is just like buying the Ferrari and putting it in the garage. You know, all the fun happens, you know, when you take the Ferrari out of the garage.
And so writing a book allows you what, right? Having a book, the second question is, how does it help you? Yeah. What are some ways, and I know this sounds so simple to you, and for some out there, they may have done this, but where does having a book really make a difference? So I've got a book, printed it, my name's on the front, I feel great about it. Now what do I do with it?
This is just rooted in who we are as human beings. It is in our DNA, whether we like it or not. We look to people that are well-known and even quote-unquote celebrities as those that have a greater valued opinion than the rest of us. And so I call it the hierarchy of desire, and it's like a pyramid. At the bottom of the pyramid are those that I would call generalists. And that might even be somebody that is a dentist or a doctor, a general practitioner in their work. And they certainly receive rewards for that. A specialist might be somebody that is an orthodontist or has a specialty work within orthodonture. But at that point, and of course, there's great compensation for being a specialist, but the real needle begins to move when you move up the pyramid to expert, thought leader, and celebrity. That's where the real impact is on the world, and that's where the real income is in the world. And so the further you move up that pyramid, from a theoretical perspective, and that pyramid, you know, means that you're just think of those that are at the top of your industry. I don't care what industry it is. Obviously, we're speaking to orthodontists, but those at the top are authors. Generally, they've appeared on media. Oftentimes, they're expert witnesses or media personalities in their field, like they are, you know, article writers, or they appear in magazines and literature in their field. They oftentimes are speakers and speak on stages and have events. And so when you stack those things, that is where celebrity comes from. And so it is where the individual that has done the work to get there, because it's not accidental. But when they've done the work to get there, they receive the rewards.
Yeah, I guess, you know, you can think about it in 100 different ways, right? You could get an attorney, or you can get Robert Kardashian back in the day.
Exactly.
Now, was Robert Kardashian necessarily he was a great attorney, but were there other defense attorneys who were probably just as good as Robert Kardashian? I'm sure, who'd never been heard of.
That's right.
The fact is, you have billions of dollars and you need a defense attorney. You called Robert Kardashian. Why? Because he was famous.
That's right.
But he was famous. And so we all have seen it in the ortho world of people who are well known and people travel to them. A young dentist once said, you know, how are you going to grow your practice? I'm just going to become famous. Well, yes and no. It's easy to become, you know, rich if you're famous, but it ain't easy to become famous. And so, you know, a book is a good way to get there. And I want to illustrate an example in my own life, well before I met Rob, of how authority marketing actually played a role in my life. My nephew, who at the time was a baby, he was a couple of years old, was really struggling. Maybe he was 3-4 years old. He was struggling with breathing. He asthma, all these issues, couldn't sleep at night, snored horribly, and nobody could get a handle on what was going on. They were just all over the place. And so I'd read a book written by an ENT in the Bronx. I think it was the Bronx. And this guy, really, what he wrote about was brilliant. He was citing literature, he was citing science. And I reached out to my sister and said, hey, you really should take him to this person. Now, that would never have happened had I not read that book. Now, it turns out when you're an expert and you're famous, you'd better deliver the goods. And he kept them waiting for over 2.5 hours in the reception area. He made a ridiculous suggestion, what felt like ridiculous in terms of the aggressiveness of his approach. And thankfully, my nephew got better. But my point is, here I was an orthodontist living in Dallas, recommending my sister see somebody, she lived in Manhattan, outside of that borough, simply because I'd read the book. She read the book. And then it's amazing how authority marketing really makes a difference. And so would it be unreasonable to expect that, if you had a book, if you've got 25 practices in your area, none of whom are famous, and you're the one with the book, would it be reasonable to say that if you use it properly, it's kind of like a secret weapon?
More than reasonable. It's not, and it's not so much a secret, right? It's like we don't want it to be a secret, right?
It's a weapon.
We want it to be a weapon. We want it to be a weapon of mass destruction, right? We want there to be this idea that you don't want to go up against this guy or this gal because they're the heavyweight in the industry. And the book is the foundation of it, right? But the book leads to, it gives you a seat at the table, right? It leads to all the other opportunities. It leads to media and PR, as your beautiful example was. And I can think of this in many instances in my life, especially in my adult business life. I went to people. I met Dan Kennedy for the first time because I came across his book, I found it, and I said, I have got to learn from this guy. And that was, almost 20 years ago.
And Dan Kennedy is, I just want to, most people listening don't know who Dan Kennedy is.
Right.
They're not dyed-in-the-wool entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
But Dan Kennedy, man, he's so much more than an expert who wrote a book, right? Like, he was an expert. He happened to write books. But Dan Kennedy, for those out there who don't know him, is probably one of the top pioneers of the modern marketing approach. Would you agree with that, Rob? Maybe
100%.
Jay Abraham, there's a few more you could throw in there that are just...
We're launching Jay Abraham's newest book, by the way. Are you excited about that? Yeah.
Wow.
Roland Frazier and Jay Abraham are launching a book together, and we're doing the launch for him, Wall Street Journal. So it'll be It'll be cool.
Amazing.
Yeah, very excited about that.
Yeah,
so, sorry, I got excited. I had to say that. No one may know who they are, but they're pretty cool.
It's okay. But Dan Kennedy is, again, brilliant man. Wrote some great books that anybody who owns a business should read at some point. He really helped define the modern marketing funnels in many respects. Yes. I think his claim to fame back in the day was the newspaper ad with a phone call on the back of it or something, like call this number and, get more information.
The 1-800, the old 1-800 recorded messages, which I used in real estate. I used it in my, I used all of that stuff, and it made me a considerable amount of money. And I learned about all of that by reading his various books. Maybe people don't know who Dan Kennedy is, but everybody knows who Gary Keller is, right? Keller Williams. And so
they don't.
Keller Williams is the biggest real estate company.
They know Keller. They don't know him.
Yeah. Well,
his story is amazing.
He wrote the book, The One Thing, which was his book after he wrote his real estate related books. And in that book, he talks about how he wrote his first book. And he says, the story is, as he tells it, that he got together, their company was growing, but not as fast as they wanted it to. And they got together with their leadership group, and they broke down 100 things they could do to grow the brand. They spent 2 days together, and they whittled the 100 things down to one thing, as the title of the book goes. And that one thing was that Gary Keller would write a book. And that book, which was The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, became the founding book, which sold over 1 million copies in an industry of about 2 million people. And Gary Keller is a billionaire now.
Oh, yeah.
Is that from his book? No, but a big part of it is because he did the one thing that transformed his entire real estate business. So it's very cool story.
Amazing. Yeah. And so this year's summit, Orthopreneurs Summit in Orlando, September 7th to 10th, the theme of it is recession-proof your practice. And if I'm an orthodontist, which I am, and if I am trying to grow my footprint, which I am, and I want people to come to me, and I'm concerned about the potential pending economic turndown, which again, you and I, men of a certain age with a little bit of silver in our beards, have lived through our share of economic downturns. If and when this one happens, I think it'll be my fourth or my fifth that I've worked through, and no two are the same. But knowing that there's probably one coming, I want to stack the deck in my favor as absolutely best as I can. And so let's jump in a little bit about books, because I'm a firm believer that it can help tremendously. Number one, what should I don't want to turn people off here because they're going to think about the dollar amount. And we've got something really special for orthodontists that we're going to talk about later. So I want to talk in generalities. It doesn't apply to necessarily the people listening. What does it typically cost to write a book?
Well, if you're talking about your standard ghostwriting company, it could very easily be six figures.
100,000 or more.
You mentioned Adam Whitty, so Advantage, certainly six figures is kind of their standard program. And we have some programs that are six figures, and I have some clients that have paid me several $100,000 to do what we do. It doesn't need to cost that much. There is an investment if you want someone to write your book for you. And then it shouldn't end there. It needs to include the actual management of the launch of the book, which we want. I mean, we named our company Bestseller Publishing, which is a whole nother story in itself. But I named it that because I spent so much money on people that made false promises when I was just trying to market my book before I ever had a book company. And I just thought to myself when I started this company, if there was just a company that I don't care what you do, just guarantee the result. Like you figure it out. That's your job. Right? Like no one goes to the orthodontist and goes, well, tell me who cares? Just
straighten my teeth.
Yeah, straighten my teeth. That's all I want to know. And so that's what I wanted when I started a company, because I was looking for that answer and solution myself. So,
and by the way, just interrupting for a second, because again, you and I know each other and I know what you do, but the people out there don't know what you mean when you say, I'm looking for a result. So let's assume you're an orthodontist and you want to write a book and you want it to be a bestseller. You want it to be, right? Because there's two ways to look at it. You can look at, I want a book to grow my practice. You said it before, you write a book so you have your name on a book. But let's rule that out for right now, because very few people I know really just want to spend that kind of time and energy to simply have a name in a book. You either want to grow your business or you want to grow your footprint personally, right? There could be Glenn Krieger at Krieger Orthodontics. Wow, he's the one who wrote the book. All the people are coming in. And then there's Glenn Krieger, who is on Good Morning America. He was on TED Talk. He was on, CNN or Fox or MSNBC.
Correct.
Name your politically affiliated talk show here,
right?
But where you start talking about people like Brene Brown, right?
Right.
These authors by name, and there are people who want that. Now, I know you can't guarantee me to be Malcolm Gladwell, but what does your guarantee mean?
Let me just take one half step back. What you described is really cool because those are two different books, right? Right. And both books are important. The one book that's focused on really just pure business growth is really a book that is written for a very specific and narrow audience.
Right.
That book does not have to be a Wall Street Journal bestseller, and you don't have to be on Good Morning America. In fact, if you were on Good Morning America, you couldn't even help the people that are watching it, right?
Right.
Because
they'd have to fly into my ortho practice, which could happen.
It could, but it's unlikely.
Well, think about Dr. Miami.
Yep.
Right? People, Dovey Prero, my good friend, told me the story once that because he was so popular because of his, Instagram and then TikTok, you'd show up in the morning and everybody would get a bracelet, and the first 20 people were guaranteed to get in. Yeah. And if you wanted a boob job, it was a 2-year wait. Now,
wow.
But that's again, is he the best plastic?
That's celebrity, baby. Yeah.
That's celebrity. That's exactly, in an ideal world, every one of us would have patients flying in from all over the country every day. And I had that as a restorative dentist. I had people flying in from around the country to see me. And it's amazing, but let me tell you folks, you don't necessarily want it. There's a lot of pressure, of pressure involved in it. But going back to it, so the first book is like niche. The business, narrow, niche related book, right? The book that you want an ROI from. You want 6 to 7 figures a year from it. And orthodontics is not inexpensive. So,
an average client has a good solid value. And so when you do the math, it's not that many clients that we're talking about to make an additional 6 and even 7 figures from.
Right.
So there's systems that can be put in place. The second book you're talking about really is kind of a new game changer, new platform builder, right? That's where I want to go from being the expert in my space to broadening that. And now I want to be known more in the success field, or more in the business consulting field, or more in the, fill in the blank.
Short game putting world.
Well, that could be really helpful to me.
Not me.
Yes. Yes. That kind of book, yes, you're talking about a significant investment. You want to hit Wall Street Journal bestseller. You want to be at least as a possibility for New York Times bestseller. And these are things that my company can actually guarantee, because with Wall Street Journal we can, because that's simply about number of sales. And so
you want to tell them the secret about New York Times?
Yeah, the New York Times is what's called a curated list. So it's really not a bestseller list. It's a list based on the books that the committee either agree with, have the same political affiliation, etc. And so if you just do a search on YouTube, you'll see all these complaints, generally from conservative authors, because they get left off the New York Times list, even though they outsell people that are on the list. Bill O'Reilly was actually very famous about that. So,
it's killing Kennedy, killing all those things.
Yeah, it was the number one book in the country, and it didn't make the New York Times bestseller list.
Yep, which blew me away when you first told me that the Wall Street Journal list is legitimately, the most sold.
Yes,
but the New York Times bestseller list is not remotely related to how many books were sold in that way. And that blew me away when I heard it. But I want to write a new book on, a new system in my office. I hire people a certain way, and it's amazing, and I think it can be taught, and I want to write about it. And I want to write this book, and I want it to be on the bestseller list somehow. That's something you can guarantee.
Yeah, it's something that we do. We do it every day. That's what we're doing for Jay Abraham and Roland Frazier.
And I mean this with respect. I don't know if Jay Abraham needs a lot of help.
You'd be surprised. It does take a lot of sales to in a very short period of time to hit those lists. And so, oftentimes they're busy making money and doing their thing. They don't have time to worry about selling books.
Following that path, just for a second, if you happen to write that book and you do happen to make it on the New York Times, the Wall Street bestseller list, do you assist, or how does one then leverage that into the next level of expertise, right? So you're on the list, you made it for a week, wonderful, great. You're off the list, it comes and goes like a comet, it's finished.
Yep.
How does one leverage that for that very rare bird listening right now who is interested in using you and getting on the Wall Street bestseller list? How do they then leverage that into that next level of expertise or celebrity, or is there not really a recipe for that?
Oh, there is, most certainly. The leverage points are primarily PR and speaking engagements. So if someone wants that kind of fame and authority hitting the Wall Street Journal list, which, there are only 10 books a week on that list, right? So if someone wants that kind of fame, typically they also are a speaker or a public figure of some kind. So the real leverage point is taking it, using the authority of the Wall Street Journal, and then expanding that into big media outlets, PR, like Good Morning America, the Today Show, et cetera, as well as speaking on big stages. And oftentimes big fees accompanied with those big stages.
If one does have a book on the Wall Street bestseller, is it pretty easy with a good PR agent to translate that into a Good Morning America, into a or is it just
no? It's Good Morning America is the top of the food chain, right? The Today Show, Good Morning America is top of the food chain. So
let's say CNN.
Yeah, absolutely. CNN, Fox, and certainly ABC, NBC, CBS. Where we might start. I mean, look, I've been on TV in number one station on Los Angeles, ABC. I've been on TV in San Francisco, San Diego, and that's me. That's the book guy, right? So yes, if that becomes a focus and a desire, then you have to stair step. You have to grow into it. maybe you get a TEDx talk, and you still have to be. It's like you said about that ENT. Like, you still have to be good, right? Like the book got you and your sister to the ENT, but he wasn't good.
No.
So you can still blow it in this process, even though everything's done right. If you're not, like, you got to be the real deal.
If you can't deliver the goods, you're in trouble.
That's exactly right.
So, and last question related to this: if Glenn Krieger wants to become famous tomorrow, I want to. Not tomorrow, but I'm willing to put in my couple of years' time.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go through the speaking circuits. I'm gonna hire a TED Talk coach.
Yep.
I'm gonna do everything I need to do. I'm gonna hire PR. What do you think it costs me, including writing a book, getting on the Wall Street bestseller list? Am I spending a couple $100,000?
Yeah, you're probably spending $200,000, but with some guarantees locked in. So with the right people, and certainly we guarantee what we promise. And so, getting someone on a TEDx stage for a great opportunity there, getting really good stage opportunities, all that is possible. It just takes like the right people and the right credentials and a little bit of time. That kind of thing is still a 1 to 2 year process.
But the takeaway from all of this, everybody, now that you got your $200,000 set aside and you're making for Hollywood, okay, the one thing you got to remember in all of this is you better have an idea.
Yeah.
Okay. This doesn't happen just because you go, over here and you say, Rob, write me a book. It doesn't work like that, folks.
Right.
You'd better have an idea. Now, Rob, I think, can definitely help you write a book if you're trying to do a specialty book, write a book to grow your business. Hey, Rob, I'm a real estate agent and I want to grow my business. Hey, Rob, I'm an orthodontist. I want to grow my business. I'm a physician. Sure. Let's talk a little bit, and he'll help you figure out, because you're telling your story as a specialist, or your story as a physician, or your story as a real estate agent.
Yes.
Things that people don't know that establish you as an expert. Yes. So let's assume that Glenn wants to write an orthodontic book, because not only do I want to have something to give out at every PTA event, not only do I want to have something to give to every person whose lead I capture online, not is it just something I want to give to everybody I meet at every Rotary Club or every giveaway or every charity event or every party or every carnival or anywhere I go, I'm giving out this book, right? And best of all, for those of us out there who really look at things like conversion rate, which means that every patient who comes in, out of every 100, what percentage are actually starting treatment, right? So 100 people come in, the best of the best of the best of the best in the world aren't above 85%, 85 to 90 at most, because there's always going to be 10% of people who just aren't going to be interested. Maybe they're not ready. But the average human being is nowhere near 85%. And so how do I get myself up to that number? Get them in as an expert already. So the person comes in having read my book, they already believe in me. They already know who I am. The odds of them believing what I tell them, because I'm being honest, and starting treatment is way higher. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, add your book. Let's say that you had a package. We do this for clients. Let's say you had a package that didn't just have your book, but it had 2 or 3 local TV appearances, where, you send them to, you give them a copy of your book, you send them to a website. Hey, watch these 2 or 3 TV appearances, read this article that I wrote, in this specialty magazine. I mean, where are they going to go, right? Where else are they going to go but you? And so you could put together, something that would just absolutely capture all of their interest in your subject matter. They'd never go anywhere else because you become the person.
I know the process, and we'll explain why in just a minute, but what is the typical process? Because you used a word before that most people here may not be familiar with, which is ghostwriting. And so I guess you could write your own book, right? You could get out your Microsoft Word or whatever program you want to use.
Trusty yellow pad.
And you could just create your own document from start to finish, right? So you just create your own book, you make it yourself, and you go find a publisher or you publish it through Amazon, and you got yourself a book. But it's tedious. You don't know the process. And I have to be honest, okay? I know a lot of people who publish their own books. I'm not talking like 1 or 2. I've known many. And I don't mean any disrespect when I say this. Every one of them I look at from the cover down, I can instantly tell it's been self-published. Like, you can tell that there was no guidance associated with it. I'm not saying they're bad books. I want to be crystal clear that the information in it may be amazing. There may be cogent thoughts that are beautiful, but you can look at the book from a mile away and you can spot. The people who wrote it don't notice that, but all of us do. And again, maybe they saved the money, maybe it was quicker, maybe it was easier, and that's wonderful. But ghostwriting means what?
So our average client is a busy entrepreneur. It's similar to the conversation we were having about Jay Abraham. Does he really need help selling books? It's all a matter of where he wants to put his focus, right? And so all of our clients are smart enough to do it themselves, but just because you might be able to pull your tooth yourself doesn't mean that you should ever attempt it. I did watch that on, what was that show with Tom Hanks?
Castaway.
Desert Island. Castaway.
He used the ice skate to knock out.
That looked bad. Right.
I winced at that one, okay?
That's how I feel when I see my clients trying to do their own book. So for us, ghostwriting is simple. It's starting first with what's the hook, what's the goal of this book. And if a client gives us a goal that we feel like isn't going to create the ROI they want, then we can guide them and direct them and let them know, look, you're going too broad, you're going too general, which that's usually the issue. So for us, it's all about let's build out this book right from the beginning so that it gets you what you want. Build your platform, attract clients, whatever that is. So it starts with the hook, the title, the subtitle. All of that is done with project management team at Bestseller Publishing. We want to map out the complete book. Every chapter needs to have a great story and context, the points that we're going to teach within that chapter, etc. So all that stuff is mapped out, and then we introduce a writer. And for our client just comes and speaks. They tell their story. They give their content. The writer asks questions. Sometimes they might even have a podcast episode like this that they can let the writer listen to. And then the writer is going to take their voice, translate it from the spoken word to the written word, which those things are different, and write the whole thing. That saves an enormous amount of time for our clients, and they can generally get a book done with just one session a week over a period of a few months. Now, there's a lot of other steps. There's multiple rounds of editing. There's proofreading. We have a whole design team. We have a graphic artist that is an award-winning book cover designer that does all of he was my first hire over 11 years ago.
Wow.
So, we have all of these pieces in place to make sure that what we're putting out is as perfect as it can be to match the client's desire.
Here's the deal, folks. I think I got to tell him now, Rob. I just have to say it.
Yeah.
So I was talking to Rob, and the conversation kind of went like this. I wish there was a book in orthodontics that explained everything from a non-denominational perspective so that any orthodontic patient, no matter who they were going to go to, could learn the basics of what makes the difference between an orthodontist and a general dentist. Like, why should I get my orthodontics done at an orthodontist office? Explaining all the things they need to know about orthodontics, from how teeth move and what we're using and wires and extractions and emergencies and everything from top to bottom, how things get financed typically. And again, underscoring what it means to go to an orthodontic specialist office as opposed to a general dentist office or an office where a doctor goes once a month. Ortho shows up once a month at a general dentist office. And so Rob had this brilliant idea. And I want to say thank you, Rob, for doing it. And you want to talk a little bit about what your idea was?
Yeah, well, I thought if you were concerned that there wasn't that book in the market, then you should write it.
They always say, if you want to get something done, give it to a busy person, right? And so over the next, I'd say 5 to 7 months, I wrote a book at Bestseller Publishing. And the ironic part about it is I will never be able to claim this book. Like, people love having their name on a book and saying, I wrote this. Here's the joke, folks. I wrote a book for all orthodontists at Rob's suggestion that the book is written in a way that whether you're self-ligating or twin, whether you're extraction or non-extraction, whether you're phase 1 or not phase 1, it doesn't matter. Airway, not airway. I didn't hit anything in the book that is controversial. It is broad strokes from 30,000 feet that any orthodontic patient could appreciate, related to the expertise of what we do on a day-to-day basis, explaining to them how things are done in an ortho office, the same way I read that ENT's book. And the best part about it, at Rob's suggestion, is you've got this book that's written about orthodontics. There's nothing personal about any section of that, but that he's making it available to every orthodontist who wants it, to where when, and again, if you're at Summit, and if you're not at Summit, Orthopreneurs Summit, go sign up at opsummit2023.com, because what I'm about to tell you alone will make the trip worthwhile. Rob is speaking there about Authority Publishing, giving great tips, tricks, suggestions, what have you, how to use a book, things like that. He will also have this ortho book available there for people to order, to where you can order 1,000 copies for your practice. And when you do that, you personally get interviewed as a ghost author so that you do your own intro chapter. So your chapter in the book, they open up the book and your name is on the cover. Right. Your introduction and bio are in the book. You start the book, you finish the book, but everything in the book is related to a generic orthodontic practice. So you're not claiming, and when my wife was pregnant with our first, there's none of that. Right. It's simply, here's the difference between a general dentist and an orthodontist. I wrote it knowing who all of you are and our commonalities, not our differences, so that we could create a book that really will blow potential patients away while establishing you as the local expert. And that's the best part about it, is you'll have the opportunity with a very special deal that Rob is going to give you at Summit to be able to order it there and get a better price than you would if you weren't there. And I'm sorry, you will not be allowed to order it until after Summit at the regular pricing, unless you're at Summit. I'm saying that right now, people. So there's no question. So sign up, even show up for one day to order that book, because it will save you a huge amount of money. And the best part is the cost per book is going to be so reasonable, it will be worth it. I dare say you could probably get 1,000 books for probably close to the cost of one case, right?
It'll be just a few dollars a book to print.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we're look, the whole idea is what you're building for orthodontists is, the premier, the place that all of them, the best, are going to go to. And so they need to be presented like that in the marketplace. And this is their way to be presented that way in the marketplace.
And I just figured, look, I don't care if 20 doctors in the same city have a book, right? Nobody's going to read the book twice, right? Right. And if your name and your bio or have it and you hand it out, you can simply ask, have you ever read my book before? And if they've seen it, they'll say yes, say great. But the truth of the matter is they haven't. Don't give ourselves so much credit that everybody in town is reading our books, okay? You give it out, hopefully they read it, you're the expert, they come to you, and who cares if there's another doctor 5 miles away who also wrote the book. Now, again, I think we're giving ourselves a little too much credit as authors, because the odds of that everybody's going to be at Summit and everybody's going to buy the book and everybody out there is going to do it is ridiculous. Yeah. But imagine the idea, for about the cost of one ortho case, you've got 1,000 books with your name, your bio. You can go on Facebook, Instagram, all social media, and show your book so that people get on it. And the name of the book is The Straight Truth About Crooked Teeth. Everything you need to know about orthodontics. That's beautiful. That's the name of the book we came up with. And
it's a great hook.
Thank you, man. I worked week after week after week with the ghost author. People know I'm really into AI, right? Artificial intelligence and ChatGPT. Not one word for this book was written from artificial intelligence. Yeah. I wrote it beforehand. And number two, there's no way AI could have captured the expertise we have as orthodontists and the angle I wanted to come with from this book. If you're at Summit, you'll have a chance to see it and see what it's all about. It's a real published book with classy cover, really well done. We don't know the exact length of it right now, but I think it's going to be somewhere around 100 pages, give or take.
We want it short so people actually read it, and we also wanted to leave room for their chapter, right? They're going to be writing an introduction, and when you give it out, just tell people, look, just read the introduction. Take the onus off of them. Yeah, if they want to read more, they can read more.
The beauty of it is that you'll have a book with your name on it, a book with your bio on it. You can give one to your mom, right, or your dad. Yep. And again, this is one you hand out. So when your marketing team is out in the neighborhood, They give it out. And again, you could spend money on so many wasteful things. This is one of those things that's going to make a difference in your practice and draw people in and get them excited about what you do. And I'm so excited that at least I'll have one version with my name on it somewhere so I can give it out to my patients. But it's going to be a game changer in terms of the ability to use this in your practice and have a definitive book that patients can read and understand that when they go on Nextdoor or Facebook or Instagram and everybody's recommending an orthodontist, you know what? You can simply go on there and go, hey, if you guys haven't seen my book, anybody interested in orthodontics, I got this great book. Oh, and by the way, anybody who attends my webinar on Thursday night can get a copy of the book. Oh, and by the way, in the email list you send out to people, click here to get a copy of our book. Like all of these things are ways you can leverage this to grow your practice. That doesn't really break the bank and establishes your credibility. So
I'll be teaching that at Summit as well, Glenn. I'm going to go over a dozen ways to use this book to grow their practice.
Right on. Yeah, and again, it was a lot of work. It was a labor of love at times. There were times it wasn't such a labor of love. And I want to give a little behind the scenes here. Like I feel like I should like anybody who buys it should get like a free behind the scenes VIP kind of show here. But the way you write a book for everybody out there, which was, I didn't know how it works. I had no clue. And the way a ghostwriter works is first Rob connects you with what do you call Bob Harpole? What is his role?
He's our operations manager at BSP.
Right. So you're going to be connected to Bob Harpole more than likely. And he's the guy who's going to be the captain of the ship, if you will. He's going to connect you to an author because they have more than one. They're connect you to an author who's going to speak in your voice. So you are going to have an opportunity. You buying the book, you're going to have the opportunity to be able to add your intro as part of buying the book. How cool is that? So you'll be connected to an author. And you'll basically give, and the way it was explained to me is every chapter that I wrote, and I think there's like 8 or 9 chapters in there. Right. Every chapter I wrote I was told, make it like a presentation, right? Make it like, how would you best describe it?
We describe it like a TED Talk. Think of it like a TED or a TEDx talk. If you've seen those before, they usually start with a story. Oftentimes there's like a crescendo or, some type of point of drama, open loops, and then teaching, and then conclude.
It was a cold and dark night when I wrapped the baby in a blanket and brought it home, not realizing that one day it would have crooked teeth, But really,
that's a little dramatic, but okay.
Yeah, it's a little over the top. You give a presentation, a TED Talk, basically, to your author. You give not 1 hour, but you create a presentation and you're on a Zoom and it's as if you're standing on stage and you give a TED Talk to them about that particular topic.
20 minutes, 30 minutes, you talk on your expertise.
So I'm telling you all right now, for your introduction, when you write it, all you have to do, and you'll get help and guidance, I'm sure from Bob, but you're going to basically tell a story about yourself. I remember when I was 12 years old and I got made fun of in school, and my mom took me to Dr. Smith, the local orthodontist, who after 18 months, or in those days, 7 years later, my teeth were straight and I remember being named prom queen or whatever. You tell the story of, and that's how I became an orthodontist, because I wanted to help people, and you just tell your story.
Yep.
And that's the beautiful thing. Now, it gets a lot more difficult when you've got 10 chapters and an introduction. And I have it in front of me right now. I just want to, and every week, by the way, I get on my Zoom with Kat, Loria, I'm giving you a shout out because I love you.
Yeah, they're fantastic.
She's amazing. Amazing.
You got the best. And
so every week she'd be with me. I'd give her the presentation, and a few days later, I'd get an email, and I would go review what she wrote. She took it, put it into sentences, and I would then clean it up. And it wasn't a lot of work. It was a fair amount, but after the second or third chapter, we started speaking in the same language. I would present it in a way that made it easier for her, and she was giving it back to me in a way that she knew would mean less revisions. And that, to me, is what really makes bestseller work so well, is that the system is set up so the author and the writer actually create this dance. And it really is a dance. It's like a tango. First time you do it, you step on each other's toes. You don't go there, you go here. That doesn't mean this, that doesn't mean that. But by the time you get to the third or fourth chapter, all of a sudden it becomes a little more graceful. You start realizing, oh, I see what you did there. Really good. And I have to give you credit for what you did. It was really well done, Rob. So
thank you, my friend.
And I want to tell everybody, here's what the book is made up of. You ready? There's an introduction that's going to be yours. Then you have the first chapter, Do crooked teeth need an orthodontist or a dentist? And I remember specifically in that chapter, I talk about how when I go to parties, people who know me 20 years and know I'm an orthodontist ask me if I can do their cleaning or fix their filling. Or I talk about that in the book, how, you know what, we're dentists, but now we're orthodontists. Not all orthodontists are dentists, but not all dentists are orthodontists. And so chapter 2 is explaining how teeth move. Chapter 3 is the different treatment options, meaning you can do aligners, you can do braces, and how they, and what that means. Chapter 4 is treating adults versus treating children and the differences we face in doing both, the things they should be aware of. Chapter 5 is phase 1 treatment, and you should be very aware that in phase 1, I'm not an advocate, nor am I against it. I simply explain what phase 1 is and why, when done, it's necessary. Chapter 6 is extractions. Why do we take teeth out? What are some of the things that cause us to want to or not want to? Then chapter 7 is the financial side of orthodontics, which really stresses the difference between an orthodontic office and a general dental office. That's when they'll really be big for your patients. Chapter 8 is retainers and everything they need to know about retainers. I think I might have even said in there that they should bring their retainer to a retainer check, if such a thing exists for them. Chapter 9 is handling orthodontic emergencies. So people understand, when you get into orthodontics, there's some things that might happen along the way. And don't worry, they're not a big deal, but here's the most common things that occur. And then chapter 10 is outcomes of orthodontics, where I basically show, hey, by the way, this is what a class 2 looks like. This is what deep overbite looks like. This is what an open anterior bite looks like. This is what a crossbite. This is what a surgical case looks like. So that this becomes the resource for any patient out there. You give this book to any patient, for themselves or for their children, they will find a ton in there to make them feel more comfortable, make them feel better, and more importantly, be thankful to you for providing that resource to them so they don't have to rely on Facebook or Instagram or YouTube or all those other things out there. And I do address the fact that what you see on YouTube is not necessarily applicable to your situation. Here's what you need to know. So again, you'll see the book at Summit. I'm telling you, they did an amazing job with it. I tried to really write it, again, from a non-denominational perspective so that any patient, anywhere, for any doctor can benefit from this book. And I want to say thank you, Rob, for doing that with us.
Thank you, my friend. I'm excited about it. I think it's going to be a game changer for the clients of yours that get started with it.
The funniest part about it was it never even crossed my mind to write the quote unquote definitive book, right? Like, I think that Ron Goldstein, a prosthodontist out of Atlanta, I think he wrote the book Change Your Smile, if I'm not mistaken. And I had it in my reception area in my office. And it was a great educational book that people would sit there and read about prosthetic dentistry and how to change their smile. And it never occurred to me at the time that, maybe I could write my own book on it, because I had his book in my reception area. And to be honest, if we wrote a book about orthodontics that was by Glenn Krieger, but it was about the same stuff, the same exact stuff, and it was a couple of bucks a book, and you bought it and gave it out to patients, it would help your practice tremendously, because it would explain to them about orthodontics. And because you're the one who gave the book, they would feel indebted to you in some way, right? The old Robert Cialdini reciprocal principle, or the law of reciprocity, right? You give them something, they feel indebted to you. But when you suggested we just do this so that, generously, how about if every person who buys it gets their own introduction? It's like, wow. Yeah. That's awesome. So again, when you're at Summit, I hope you'll be there, opsummit2023.com. When you're there, you're going to get to see this. And I feel like we should do something special there for anybody who shows up. I promise you, the best deal you will get on this book will be at Summit. You will not be able to buy it any other way. It will be at Summit. After Summit, you'll still be able to get it. You'll still get a great deal on it. But the cost of your ticket alone to Summit will be probably less than what you'll save on getting 1,000 copies or 50.
We'll make that happen.
I appreciate that. And so anything else you want to add to the process? Anything else we haven't talked about? Anything you want to throw in there, Rob?
That's pretty complete. I mean, it's exciting. Obviously, I shared briefly, I will be teaching, but more than that, we will have resources for all of the people that join on what they should be doing with their staff on a regular basis to attract new patients. So we're not going to just give you the books and then go figure it out. We're going to show everyone exactly what they need to be doing to make an ROI on it.
a book on orthodontics with your name on it, your bio, your introduction, and you get it very reasonably priced. And on top of that, you're going to have your hand held afterwards about how you should use this to position your marketing, all for probably less than the cost of bringing a consultant into your practice for a day. I'm just thankful for you, Rob, because this wouldn't have happened without you. And yeah, I wrote it, but again, wouldn't have happened without your impetus. If we hadn't seen each other in Orlando at that mastermind, and if you hadn't suggested it, but that's what you're good at, man. And now,
thanks, man. I'm excited about it. I know it's been like in the coming, and here we go. We're almost there.
As of the recording of this, the book is in the can. It's done. It's completely written. We're just going to look at the final proofreads, get that cover designed, and crossing fingers, hoping. I know we'll have a few copies at Summit to show.
Oh, absolutely.
So they can see it. And it's a giant board book. It's like 4 feet high by 2 feet. No, I'm kidding. That's the catch. It's like baby's first, where's my belly button book? The giant hard board book, right? It's going to be 4 feet by 2 feet wide. And you get 1,000 of them dropped off in your office, but you can't get them inside. Rob, I can't tell you how excited I am to have you at Summit. You're a great guy. And
thanks, buddy. You're a
can't wait to write my second book with you, the one that I can actually advertise and tell everybody that I wrote.
That's going to be a big one.
Yeah, well, you and I have already talked about. We already know what it's going to be about. We've talked about that one.
Yeah, I have all the notes on it. I'm ready to go when you are.
I just need a few days to decompress from this one because
fair enough.
I tell everybody out there, I'm just telling you, to write a book is an amazing experience. You learn so much about a topic. You learn so much about yourself. And the creative process is wonderful. I will tell you, it will take a lot out of you. And I remember when I told
all the help, it's still an enormous amount of work.
And when we started this process, I remember I told you I had 2 books I wanted to write. And I said, I want to do them both at the same time. And you're like, I wouldn't recommend that. And you are the expert for a reason, because I don't know if I'd be married any longer if I did both at the same time.
We don't want to mess up that.
Yeah. Well, looking forward to seeing you at September 7th to 10th in Orlando. And again, brother, for everybody out there who is not currently registered, I don't know what you're waiting for. Recession-proof your practice. This is the presentation that's going to make your practice that much better. It's going to reduce your stress. It's going to increase your profitability. It's going to help you live your most profitable, happy life. So go to opsummit2023.com. Hope to see you there. And again, Rob, thank you so much.
Thank you, my friend. Great being with you.
We've got several stressors in our life. We've got a great profession, but we've got to deal with overhead. We've got to deal with productivity. We got to deal with team members that are outside of our control sometimes. And the great news is all of these issues are addressed in depth in this year's curriculum at Orthopreneurs Summit. So please go to opsummit2023.com. Sign up for the meeting that's almost sold out, that everybody's going to be talking about, that you really need to be at to be your best practice with the lowest stress and highest profitability. opsummit2023.com. Please join me there so that I can take care of you even better than you take care of your patients.